Economist here. Cool. We got 8 people in here, 8 likes already. Awesome. Hit that like button when you come into the stream. YouTube algorithm will pick up the video, start spreading it around for more people to come in and comment into the comment section. Makes the videos much better. So today we're going to discuss how the dollar replaced gold as the world reserve currency. You know, for the longest time, history has shown that precious metals were the basic form of currency. And when it came to international trade, it was definitely gold, and being the main settler of the trade when it comes to international, commodities, products, whatever it was that these nations were trading with each other. But now the dollar is the world reserve currency. And a lot of people don't even realize that gold doesn't back the dollar. Gold's not really used as a world reserve currency, although it's starting to pick up a lot more pace lately. But gold has pretty much been taken away from the monetary system. And it's really interesting to think about like how this occurred. Like, how did the dollar end up being the world reserve currency? Because it's not like it was just a decision that was made by, like, say, an elected official or something like that. He says, okay, hey, we're going to make the dollar the world reserve currency. It really grew into that position. Now, something I found interesting was this link that I left down in the description to the International Monetary Fund. It's called Money Matters, and IMF exhibit the importance of global cooperation, system in crisis, talking about 1959 to 1971. Now, I'm going to read some of this stuff and we're going to talk a little bit about it, but I found it really interesting when you think about like some of the things that must have been taking place there in the late 60s, early 70s. On August 15th, 1971, the United States stunned the world by declaring that it would cease redeeming dollars for gold from its reserves. With this, the dollar's link to gold was severed, dismantling the foundation of Bretton Woods. The financial system that had helped bring a quarter century of prosperity to the industrialized world had finally collapsed. With nothing concrete back in the US dollar, would the world lose confidence in it? What would replace Bretton Woods' system? Now, again, something very interesting when I think about it is that, how did the dollar actually end up being the world reserve currency? Like, how did it get into this position? And now when we think about like what was taking place during the times of like the industrialized revolution, like when everybody all of a sudden was start pumping out a lot of products, the United States was like the leader of the pack, right? Now, at the very beginning of the links of the system in crisis IMF exhibit, whatever this thing is, it's talking about the growing economy needs for liquidity. And I think this is pretty interesting to think about. The rapid expansion of production and trade in the 1950s and 60s required a constantly expanding supply of monetary reserves. To increase total liquidity, gold, the primary reserve asset, could not be mined fast enough to meet this demand. As a result, the US dollar, and to a lesser extent the British pound, were used as reserve assets. So really what was happening is that there was so much expansion and transactions taking place that there just wasn't enough gold to handle all the transactions that were happening out there, and people were looking for liquidity, looking for a currency that they could use to facilitate the trades. As good as gold, how does a national currency like the US dollar become a reserve asset, adding to the world's total liquidity? The United States runs a balance of payments deficit by spending more money in other countries by buying their products, investing in them, or giving them dollars than they spend in the United States. You get that part? They're spending more outside of the United States than in the United States, right? The United States runs a balance of payments deficits by spending more in other countries, by buying their products, investing in them, and giving them dollars. The extra dollars are held by countries' central banks. The banks do not ask the United States to redeem them for gold or any other currency. As long as foreign banks accept and hold dollars as if they were gold, the dollars act as reserves. And so that's essentially what ended up happening there, is that there just simply wasn't enough gold at the time, and that the people, the other countries out there were looking to facilitate their trade, couldn't figure out exactly how it was going to happen until the dollar was introduced, right? Or at least they started using the dollar. How long could the world rely on the United States and the United Kingdom to run balance of payment deficits and supply the necessary additional liquidity? Could the United States and the United Kingdom continue to create more dollars and pounds when their own reserves of gold were gradually declining? The US dollar fueled the growth of the world's economy, but at a price. Inflation at home and reduced gold reserves. So they were printing up money. They were like, hey, there's a huge demand for dollars out there so everybody can do this trade. They can facilitate trade amongst each other. And there was a huge demand for dollars that were taking place. So the United States was buying up a bunch of stuff and sending these dollars out to the world because the world was in huge demand for it. So they were able to fuel a huge economic growth after that. The only problem is that they had printed way too much money and put it out there, right? Too little liquidity could permit a crisis to develop in which most of the world would tend towards economic stagnation and would suffer from declining trade. And that's what the problem was, is they said, oh crap, man, if we try backing off from all this liquidity, all this money printing, that there would be too little liquidity and it would permit crisis to develop. So they knew as soon as they turned off the printing press, as soon as they stopped doing this, that the whole world would start falling into a crisis situation. Let me continue on here. Going into part 4 of this is pretty interesting. The dollar glut. Providing reserves in exchange for the whole world is too much for one country and one currency to bear. This was Henry H. Fowler, the U.S. Treasury, or the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury. And this is pretty interesting what he has to say. Increasingly, the IMF and the International Monetary Community realized that the Bretton Woods system, based on the gold standard and using dollars as the main reserve, had a serious flaw. Right? Liquidity deficit. Continuous U.S. balance of payments deficits during the 1950s had provided the world with liquidity, but had also caused dollar reserves to build up in central banks of Europe and Japan. As the central banks redeemed these dollars for gold, the U.S. gold reserves dipped dangerously low. So they were printing up money because there was a huge demand for liquidity out there, right? The U.S. dollars, they're out there buying stuff. These dollars go out to the rest of the world. Everybody's loving it, and they're getting these dollars, and they're accumulating a lot of dollars, right? These central banks outside of the United States are. And they're like, man, what are we doing with all these dollars? So they start cashing them in for gold, right? The United States, okay, here we go. If there was too many dollars out there, why didn't the United States just simply stop spending the money? There you go, stop spending money abroad. Here's the thing. The United States enjoyed the benefits of being able to spend money freely, such as acquiring commodities and consumer products from abroad. Think about that for just a second. The United States enjoyed the benefit of being able to spend money freely. Just, hey, we could print up and buy all this stuff from around the world, and we get to essentially do it freely, right? And that was the problem, is that they started acquiring commodities and consumer products. We started increasing our standard of living because of it. In addition, the U.S. foreign policy goal of containing communism in the face of the Cold War and decolonization kept the dollars flowing. So as the United States was trying to prevent communism, they were spending money outside of the United States, which kept the flow of dollars leaving, right? They couldn't just stop spending. We would lower our standard of living, and then communism would have won, right? I mean, that's kind of the idea that I get out of that when I read that part of it. And this is where it gets good, because it gets into Triffin's dilemma, right? Triffin's dilemma. Testifying before the U.S. Congress in 1960s, economist Robert Triffin exposed a fundamental problem in the international monetary system, right? So this is where things get really to the point that there is no real way of avoiding this situation, right? Here, I'll just read it and we'll talk about it. If the United States stops running the balance of payment deficit, the international community would lose its largest source of additions to reserves. The resulting shortage of liquidity could pull the world economy into a contractionary spiral, leading to instability. If the U.S. deficits continued, a steady stream of dollars would continue to fuel world economic growth. However, excessive U.S. deficits would erode confidence in the value of the U.S. dollar. Without confidence in the dollar, it would no longer be accepted as the world's reserve currency. The fixed exchange rate system could break down, leading to instability. So that's what he is saying right there, is that if the United States stopped running a balance of deficits, the international community would lose its largest source of additions to reserves. The resulting shortage of liquidity could pull the world economy into contractionary spiral, leading to instability. Now that right there, that's the problem that we are facing today, because the quantitative easing that is coming from the Federal Reserve, where they are actually pulling money back out of the system, right? So quantitative easing was injecting money into the system. Quantitative tightening is pulling it out. And what Triffin, what Robert Triffin was trying to say here is that if the United States stopped running a balance of payments, the international community would lose its largest additions of reserves. So yeah, no wonder why it is that these nations out there around the world are trying to figure out how it is that they can do trade with their own sovereign currency, because the United States is starting to move out of that idea of continual liquidity injections by the purchasing of foreign goods, right? They're trying to back away from that whole idea, onshoring, bringing manufacturing back here to the United States, the quantitative tightening. But if the U.S. continued a steady stream of dollars, a steady stream of dollars would continue fueling world economic growth. However, excessive U.S. deficits, right, what we're experiencing today, would erode confidence in the value of the U.S. dollar. Without confidence in the dollar, it would no longer be accepted as the world reserve currency, and much like we are facing today, right? And so this is all stuff that was stated back in 1960s. What is this, like 60 years ago, 63 years ago? All right. Triffin's solution, right? So this is what Robert Triffin decided that would be an answer to the problem of constant deficit spending to inject money into the world commerce out there. What he was saying is that if you wanted to back away from being the world reserve currency, you would have to have another currency out there. Triffin proposed the creation of a new reserve unit. These units would not depend on gold or currencies, but would add to the total liquidity. Creating such a new reserve would allow the United States to reduce its balance of payments deficits while still allowing the global economy expansion. A fundamental reform of the international monetary system has long been overdue. Its necessity and urgency are further highlighted today by the imminent threat to the once mighty U.S. dollar. And again, this is coming from Robert Triffin back in 1960. In fact, that quote was November of 1960. Let's see, and I think that was pretty much the bulk of it. So now, just to kind of do a quick review of this, how many we got in here? 72 people. Just to do a quick review of this, what ended up happening is essentially that gold was the world reserve currency. The United States, during World War II, became a manufacturing powerhouse, distributing food and products and war efforts and everything they needed, or everything the Europeans needed to fight, they were sending over there. In exchange for that, for all these, for all the war effort, food, and everything they were sending over there, they were getting gold back, right? So the United States was exporting a lot of stuff and importing a lot of gold. Now, this really got to the point where in the 1950s, the United States was ultimately the powerhouse. They were the #1 country, economic superpower, producing more stuff than anybody else in the world, distributing that out to the rest of the world. And they were flooding the world with dollars. Right? So as the world was looking for liquidity, right, typically found in gold, but gold was pretty much now sitting over at the United States was handing out a bunch of dollars. Now, granted, the Federal Reserve had already been in existence by this time because they were, set up back in 1913. So the Federal Reserve was there as an expansionary money, right? So they were going to have like the elastic money supply. As the economy heated up, they would inject money into the system. As the economy slowed down, they would pull it back out. Well, at this point, there was so much demand for liquidity, for dollars out there to do world trade, that the United States just kept, producing and pushing these dollars out there for the world because there was so much demand for it. Well, and then they realized, oh crap, there was way too many dollars printed up, right? And that a lot of these countries were realizing it. And so they were like, hey, we want our gold. Like, here's your dollars, you give us the gold. And at first, it's like no big deal, I mean, you can go ahead and some of these people can get their gold. But then if too many people are starting to go for it, it just starts to become too much of a nightmare. And it's going to start crashing the system. And that's when Nixon was just like, okay, that's it, no more, right? You're no more trading dollars for gold. We're going to sever that whole thing, and we're going to go 100% fiat currency. And the dollar today will buy what a dollar can tomorrow, and nobody believed it, right? And so the dollar actually at that point really started to lose a lot of confidence, much like what Triffin was warning about. And it got so bad at one point that, even in the late 70s, the Carter administration had to issue out treasuries, like United States Treasury debt, that was due in German marks and Swiss francs. That's how people were upset with the whole dollar situation that was happening. Nobody trusted the dollar. Nobody wanted to have it. People were setting up foreign bank accounts just to protect themselves away from the dollar. And this was the situation that was being faced after, Nixon had severed this gold standard. Well, the United States was going to fail. It was going into some serious situations as far as the inflating of the dollar. It was losing confidence. People didn't want it. People were getting out of it altogether. And that's what, Volcker shot the interest rates up to 15% to try and save the dollar from losing any further, going down any further. That essentially stopped stop the confident loss, right, within the dollar, and then began to grow confidence again after that. I guess that's the easiest way to kind of understand that. There was something else in here I wanted to share with you guys, and I can't remember exactly what it was. I can't remember exactly. Maybe I'll think of it in a minute. All right, so we've gone on for long enough. Let's see here. Oh, where are my glasses? Here we go. How did lumber and mining companies replace gold with script currency? Well, that would be an interesting one to talk about. Piloting my truck for the next few minutes. I'll join soon. All right, like button. Hey, good evening, Kevin from Lakeland, Florida. Howdy from popular Bluff, Missouri. Very cool. Good start to understanding how the dollar replaced gold is understanding what money is, and it isn't gold. Actually, money, gold is money. Everything else is debt. That's really what it comes down to. And if you look at it as a lot of people will look at fiat currencies as money. And that's not necessarily money. Money has to have some characteristics of it that the dollar doesn't do. There's a difference between money and currency. And so the dollar is currency, but money is something that holds value, something that is, something that is transferable through any kind of situation. And I guess what I mean by that is when you have a dollar, you may find yourself in a particular situation in which the dollar fails, right? It's it's backed by a bank. So if the bank fails, then the dollar fails, right? But gold doesn't have that third party claim to it, right? It just is an item. So it's very different. I mean, a lot of people look at money as, or at least as gold, not being money, but being more like this barbaric relic or something like that. I don't see it that way. I mean, I see it as money and dollars and fiat as currency, something to exchange values. Anyway, let's continue on here. Nixon said was temporary stopping the dollar from being gold back, if I remember correctly. He did say it was temporary, but I mean, we all know that's not the truth. And you know, they might have thought about it being temporary at the time, and he might have, like, you know, even Nixon might have been convinced by the bankers that, you know, it was going to be temporary, but there was no way that there was no way it was going to be temporary. Like, there was no reeling back in all those dollars at that point to take it back to a gold standard. Hi, Simon from Central California. Still buying gold and lots of silver. Good for you. Dishes, hello, everyone. Yeah, hey, everybody go over and check out Dishes every day. Check out her channel. She's getting her subscription count up a ways. We're trying to get it up to a monetized position, so go show her some love and like some of her videos. Yellen could mint $1 trillion platinum coin and it would actually work. No, it won't. No, it won't. You know why it won't? It's because how do you take a platinum coin and say, hey, all the debts are paid off, and then expect that dude's over there, his retirement, to still be paid? Right? Because it's sitting on a bunch of debts. Like, most people's retirements are somebody else's debt. So what you're going to do is just eliminate all this and say, hey man, your part of the debt is sitting on that platinum coin over there that you don't get a piece of. It doesn't work like that. And the only reason that the situation is able to function as far as the debt issuance and everything like that is because the future has been promised to pay. That's the only way it works. Is like they are promised. We have put them in a position in which that they will be forced to provide goods and services to make up for the fact that the people who are enjoying the debt right now or being paid off from the debt, what they get to enjoy the efforts of what the future is about ready to give them. That's what's going on here. Right? So you can't just pay it off. I mean, you know, it's that whole platinum coin thing is complete imagination. That's what it is. It's a lot like the BRICS currency. It's just complete imagination. Like, you can't do it like that. You know, it's all about somebody else's promise to pay. They got to put out effort, products, services in order to make up for the promise to pay. Right? I mean, you can't just eliminate it and expect everybody to be cool, you know. One important factor to remember is that during the first half of World War II, most of the world was at war, but not the United States. That's right. That's why we were like exporting all our stuff to the rest of the world. All right. During this time, they accumulated about 2/3 of the world's gold supply. Yep, very true. Lumbermen, big and strong. Okay. Hit the like button, guys. Thank you, Dishes. Do you see yields at 5%? I could see them going to 5%. Silver is greater than gold. Yeah, I could say that. All right, now copper is semi-precious metals. It's just an underdog below the rest. Just ask an old school scrapper that melted down pennies. Yeah, I mean, I work retail sales for a living. Like, I, you know, work at a counter with a till, you know, making change, and I pull out all the copper pennies out of the till. So I just swap them out with zinc pennies, and I keep all the coppers. And I do that just about every day, you know. I pull up copper pennies. Platinum coin is another mirror and smoke machine to gain confidence. Yeah, I can totally see that, you know. The U.S. entered World War I late too. Yeah. Hey, Bittner. Hey, all-nighter. Right on. Yeah, and so that's really what this, you know, what it comes down to is that the United States ended up with all the gold, right? And once you have all the gold and you have this higher standard of living, then what do you do with it? Like, you know, the rest of the world was just like, hey, you know, we're producing a bunch of stuff that you're enjoying there, and we want our gold back, right? I mean, you know, you guys got it all. And so we were sitting there going, man, we really enjoy the standard of living, and we have all the gold. Shit, now what, right? Well, if we give up the gold, we lose our standard of living. Can't give up the gold, right? So you just sever them from it and say, hey, we promise that we won't print too much. And now, unfortunately, here's the situation that we're at, right? And see, that's what it makes me think. It was just like, okay, so how does another currency replace the dollar? All right, what did the dollar do? Like, the dollar replaced gold because people were under the idea that the dollar could be exchanged for gold, right? So if you had another currency out there that says, hey, we can exchange this currency for dollars, right? But that's not what's happening. What you have is people out there saying, hey, this one is going to compete with dollars. But that's not how the dollar took over as the world reserve currency. It was working in conjunction with gold, right? So people weren't looking at like the dollar as competing with gold. They looked at the dollar like as if it was gold because they could exchange their dollars for gold, right? So when as that was taking place, people were like, well, we can mess around with this cumbersome gold, pay the storage, pay the security, pay for the transportation of it, or we could use like the US dollars, which makes all that stuff a hell of a lot easier. And on top of that, we could actually use US treasuries because then we can actually get paid a little bit from holding on to the dollars, which is not actually dollars, it would be the government debt. But since they were traded like dollars, instead of having something like gold where it costs you to store it and transfer it and secure it or whatever, you could have a US treasury that pays you to actually hold on to it. So people were like, why would you hold gold when you can hold these US treasuries? And that's really how it became more popular. So you think about the dollar being the world reserve currency and something else competing with it. Is it really going to be something that comes in and says, hey, I'm gonna fight you? Right? I'm gonna be a competing currency, or is that like something that's gonna come in and start taking over the dollar? That doesn't seem very likely to me. What seems very likely coming over and taking over the dollar would be something that works in conjunction with the dollar, say something that gets exchanged for the same value as a dollar, right? But isn't exactly like a dollar, something like a digital currency, right? That to me makes more sense when you think about how the dollar became the world reserve currency. It wasn't competing against gold, it was working in conjunction with gold. So like a central bank digital currency or a stable coin or something like that, it would work in conjunction with the dollar, not competing against it, right? When you have a competing currency, something like, the BRICS nation and a gold-backed currency or something like that, then you have something that's coming in saying, hey, I'm better than you, or I'm different, or I'm not the same thing, right? And so therefore you have something that's not like working in conjunction, but something that is competing, right? They're fighting each other. Okay, so now when we think about Gresham's law, when it comes to this, right? Gresham's law states that bad money will chase out good. Now, if you're sitting there with something that you would consider good currency and something that is bad currency, and now you're like, dang, I need to buy some stuff. What am I going to use, right? Would you really give up the good currency and say, I'm going to hold on to my bad currency? Or would you say, no, I'm going to hold on to the good currency and spend the bad currency? That's what generally ends up happening, is people will hold on to the good currency, or what they perceive as to be good currency, and they will spend the bad currency out there, right? And this is what Gresham's law, meaning bad currency will chase out good. The only thing that'll be left in the economy is the bad currency. Now, when we think about this back to the gold and the dollar, it's almost as if it's the same thing, right? Like, think about it. If you had a gold coin or a $50 bill, right? A $50 gold coin or a $50 bill, right? And you're looking at these two and you're thinking, yeah, I think I'll hold on to the $50 bill and give up my gold coin. Does that really make sense? I mean, they're exchangeable, right? 1-to-1 for each other. One of them's made of paper, the other one's made of metal, right? I mean, really, you'd be like, no, I'm going to hold on to the gold coin, and here, you can have this paper 50, right? So that's the one that ends up getting used, and the gold ends up getting hoarded, right? And so this is really how Gresham's law ends up taking place, is that if you have a competing currency, or if you have another currency inside of it, or inside of the economy, whatever the bad currency is, that's the one that ends up getting used, right? The good currency gets hoarded. So now if we think about, like, you introduce a BRICS nation currency, like, okay, if it was backed by gold, I would say, okay, maybe it might be, considered like a decent currency. But for the most part, it's probably not going to be like backed by gold. But let's say it is, right? Well, gold would be like the good currency, right? So are people going to be like, hey, yeah, I'm going to hold on to my US dollars while I spend this gold out there? Or are they going to hold on to the gold and spend the US dollars? That would mean the dollar would be used more often than the BRICS nations currency would. And then let's flip it around. Let's say it's not, right? Let's say it's the bad currency and the dollar is the good currency. Okay, well then let's consider it that way. How is it that a bad currency that is competing against the dollar get introduced and used. Like, you actually have to have confidence behind it that somebody says, yeah, I'll go and get a bunch of these BRICS nations currency and use it, right? If it's competing against the dollar, most likely it's going to be the bad currency, and it will not have the confidence in order for people to go in there and start using it. Now, if it had a backing to the dollar, say like, okay, we can exchange this 1-to-1 for the dollar. Well, now you have something that it was just like, okay, well, it's working in conjunction with, right? You can either hold on to the dollars, which are difficult to get or whatever, you know, it's cumbersome to hold on to, especially during quantitative tightening or something like that. You have liquidity issues. All of a sudden, the BRICS nations like, hey, you need liquidity. We have this currency. It's trading 1-to-1 with the dollar. Well, then people would be much more confident in dealing with it, right? Saying, okay, well, it's not a competing currency. It's working in conjunction with it, much like the dollar was working in conjunction with gold, right? Then in that case, then the BRICS nations could be in there facilitating trades or doing whatever without necessarily the competition factor, but more of a situation in which that they are working together, right? BRICS nations being the bad currency would then end up being the one that was more often used, as people would have confidence that they could just change their BRICS nations currency into the dollars. And then slowly the dollar would just, get hoarded away and moved out, and the BRICS nations would be the bad currency that then floods in through Gresham's law. Did I explain it? I mean, I think I got that all right, But I guess bottom line is that if you have a competing currency out there, whatever the bad currency is, if you have a competing currency, it has to have confidence behind it. And then whatever the bad currency is the one that ends up getting used, the good currency gets hoarded. So if everybody's talking about how the dollar's going away and it's not going to be used anymore, that's the good currency getting hoarded away. I don't know. That's the way I see it anyway. Does anybody know how government got away with paper money, considering Constitution says states mint money and only in gold and silver? How did paper money printed by the government get the SCOTUS and never challenged? Okay, so Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution says no state shall coin anything but gold and silver as a legal tender and payment of debt, right? So it's a constitutionally written. That's within the rights of the people in the states, that they cannot coin anything but gold and silver as a legal payment of debt. Now, Congress is set up to be the issuer of money and determine its value and stuff like that. Okay, so the Federal Reserve, although is technically not like constitutional, was voted in by Congress, right? What was it? 1913, September 23rd, 1912. I'm sorry, September 23rd, 1912, and it was just a handful of people who were left of Congress, right? Who was left to vote the Federal Reserve Act. Now you got to think this is 1912, so it's not like government could just jump on a plane and go and vote or whatever. Most of these people, most of the government was back home, right? 1912, it was like they're back at their house or wherever it was. They didn't meet during this time, but a handful of them stayed behind so that they could vote this particular law into existence, right? The Federal Reserve Act. From that point, the Fed was given a charter to be able to expand the money supply, right? And the whole idea behind the Federal Reserve, they were sold to the government as having the ability to have this elastic money supply. Because the major problem with the gold standard is that you have these major boom and bust cycles that take place as the concentration of wealth happens during the booming times, and then just redistribution during the bad times, only to take off again. So this business cycle would happen every 5, 7, 8 years or whatever, and it was very devastating, right? So they come to the conclusion, it was just like, well, what's really causing this business cycle or causing the downturn during the business cycle is literally running out of money. You only have so much currency in existence, right? So as commerce is taken off and the economy is rolling, all this gold and all the currency that is being used at the time, which is all gold back, starts to accumulate into the hands of the business owners, right? Those who are doing the most business. So this is where the problem begins, because all of a sudden now the economy doesn't have enough money to continue on with their commerce, right? And so that's really where the major problem is. The Federal Reserve says, hey, during this time when the economy is hot and you have all this, economic activity taking place and there's a concentration of money that is happening, we can inject money into the system and keep the economy rolling, right? So as there's a demand for liquidity, they're providing liquidity. And then as the demand for liquidity falls, as the business cycle churns and then people start slowing down on their commerce, they would pull that liquidity back out. That was how the Federal Reserve was sold to Congress. It was like, hey, we're going to smooth out these business cycles so we don't have so much dramatic swings. And of course, what ended up happening was they printed up too much money, and then the whole system started to fall apart again. But that was like the idea. That's how they were sold. That's how they sold it to Congress anyway, or sold it to the government, is that they were going to be there to have an elastic money supply to smooth out the business cycles. All right. Let's see here. Read and rap. The academic effects and laws are actually economics for dummies. You don't need some law, just obvious cause and effect. You're getting on wood. This stuff just bugs me. So you don't believe there's economic forces that take place? I mean, right? You don't. That's that kind of question. It really does kind of make me think about how is it that I was able to call out a lot of the stuff that I had been able to if I didn't understand the economic forces that were happening. It's not just cause and effects, right? I mean, you could look at all kinds of politics and say this is causing that, right? And you can have all the evidence in the world of it, right? I mean, that's happens every day. I mean, you just turn on the news and you can find all kinds of political talk about what's causing the economy to happen through these political actions. But I look back at, Cantillon's essay, and I look at some of the economic forces that he was talking about happening 200 years ago, and I see them taking place today, right? So it is economic forces. There are certain, issues that come up within the economy that are pretty much law, right? I mean, now, is Gresham's law an actual law, like the law of gravity? You throw something up in the air and it's definitely going to fall back to earth. I mean, is it that kind of law? I don't think so. Gresham's law is more of understanding the nature of human, the human nature, right? I mean, it's just like, how do people react when they have two different currencies in their hand and they understand that one of them's good and one of them's bad? What is the natural reaction of people, right? Now, is that a law? No, it's like, it's an instinctual thing that's happening within people, whether it's instinctual or just logical or whatever. It's not necessarily a law, but most generally speaking, it's probably going to end up working out that way. So you can kind of almost consider it a law, right? Anyway, all-nighter hider. I wonder what Jason and Chris are going to do instead. Jason has been talking about hanging it up for a while. Whoa, what are you guys talking about? Huh. How do you get silver out of boards and relays? Oh, yes. Legal language, legalese, and the Fed is a private member association, which is why they change an excise tax for using their currency. Well, they charge an excise tax. Yeah. Here we go. UE, how would you compare a digital currency like Bitcoin to the US dollar, using the same train of thought comparing US dollars to gold-backed BRICS nations currency? Well, I mean, if you have anything that is fixed, right? So like Bitcoin, gold, anything like that, where there's only a certain amount, right? Even with gold, like people are like, well, you can mine more gold or whatever. True. But even mining it is only a certain limited amount. Like, I mean, even if you were to try to mine a lot of it, you can only mine so much, right? And so there's a limited amount. When it comes to Bitcoin, there's a limited amount. When it comes to US dollars, there's no limit, right? I mean, there's nothing there to even say, hey, like, you know, you can only go this far. It isn't like that at all. And so when you have like Bitcoin or gold, you have something that is fixed. When it comes to fiat, you have something that is very, you know, elastic. So comparing them, it's like Bitcoin and gold can be compared to each other, right? In a lot of sense, like, you know, as far as like money purposes behind it, it can very well like serve so much of the same purpose, right? There's only a certain amount of it. There's, you know, it's easily transferred around the world, stuff like that. But when it comes to fiat currencies, you can print up as much as you want, so it doesn't have the same characteristics anymore. Now, let's say, for example, we want to have, you know, Bitcoin be the world reserve currency. What will end up taking place is the same thing that we were just reading about a little bit here, is that the most industrious people, right, will be able to produce and sell more than other nations out there, and they will be able to accumulate more money, right? And because there's a limited amount of money out there, whether it's gold or Bitcoin, whatever you're using for your trade, they will end up growing an accumulation of it and depriving the rest of the world with the ability to do commerce. And this is the same reason that the United States started issuing out all the Federal Reserve notes, is because they were trying to figure out a way that they can continue on issuing out currency or liquidity so that the nations around the world would be able to continue to do commerce because they had such a demand for it, right? It wasn't like, I don't necessarily think it was the idea that the government, like the United States and the government are sitting around going, man, we're going to issue out a bunch of dollars so that the world could use our, you know, our currency, and then we'll end up being the world reserve currency status. I don't think they like sat around and thought that up. I think what ended up happening is that it just got into that position and then it started just growing from there. And they're like, crap, what do we do to stop this? And you can't stop it once the genie was out of the bottle. Like, the demand for dollars was just growing too much. And unless they wanted to lose all their gold, they had to keep issuing out the dollars, and then eventually get to the point where like, oh crap, let's cut that off. So anything that's like a fixed currency, like gold or Bitcoin or anything that's fixed, is going to end up suffering through the same problems that was existing during the gold standard, and that is that accumulation of gold, and then you get accumulation of gold, you start moving into luxuries, foreign imports start coming in, domestic manufacturing leaves, eventually you lose all your money and you fall into poverty because you're not producing anything to sell to the rest of the world. That's the unfortunate case for Bitcoin and gold. No matter how I see it, like, if we have that for a reserve, the most industrious nations are going to do awesome. The consuming nations like the United States will suffer in poverty from it. Now, that being said, I think it's quite important, very important for everybody, right? The individual person to load up on as much gold and silver as possible, including Bitcoin. I myself, you know, purchase Bitcoin and probably sit more on cryptocurrencies than I do anything else. But it's only for the separation of the third party, right? Like, crypto's a little different on that sense, since I store most of it with Coinbase, which would be back at a third party. But the idea behind it is that you don't have to worry about the third party, right? You don't have to worry about banking collapse. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. These are assets that you have in your possession. You know, you own it, you protect it. Again, with cryptocurrencies, it might be a little different. Like, for me, I store at Coinbase, so it's not really me, it's a third party who has it. But there was a time that I did keep my private keys, you know, and I held on to those, and I had them separated from everything else, so that if there was a banking collapse, or, you know, Coinbase failed or something like that, I would still have access to my cryptocurrencies. You know, big difference in all that stuff. All right. Okay, man. Narrate knobs. Okay. I may be wrong, but I think the Fed has been subcontracted. Yeah, it seems that way to me too. A certain currency has lost all value. It must be a coincidence that gold and BTC has had a huge sell-off. It wouldn't be to prop up a currency, would it? No, I think what's going to happen is that you're going to find over the course of the next 6 months to a year, especially in probably about 6 months or so, you're really going to start finding that the amount of liquidity issues, the liquidity crisis that starts to present itself is going to be very alarming. What's happening is that the Federal Reserve is sorry, getting a fly out of here. The Federal Reserve is in a monetary tightening position. Now, when you have plenty of liquidity out there, everybody was just like, oh no, inflation, too much money, Federal Reserve is, printing us into death or whatever. Okay, so you get that kind of scenario. Yes, there's plenty of money in the system. But the Federal Reserve is in monetary tightening right now. They're quantitative tightening, so they're pulling money back out of the system. And this is every month, right? It's getting less and less money in the system. Well, eventually it's going to hit a point in which that the demand for dollars is going to be greater than the availability of them out there, right? And I know a lot of people are probably very confused by that, but you also have to understand that there is a lot of debt that is due outside of the United States, debt that is due in dollars. It didn't have anything to do with the United States, not our governments, not our corporations, not the people, nothing, right? But yet these debts are due in dollars. And when those debts start to come due, there's going to be a high demand for dollars. And if you have such, narratives as de-dollarization taking place, that means that people are not rolling those debts over into new debts, right? So if you have a contract that is coming due, that is due in dollars, you roll that over into another contract that is due in dollars. Well, if that doesn't happen, right, now you have demand for dollars in order to pay off that debt, and that debt disappears, right? That's, again, dollars leaving the system. Those debts themselves get used as dollars, right? So what we're going to end up finding here, So what we're going to end up finding here as we start moving into like the next 6 months to a year is that there's going to be a tipping point in which that there's plenty of dollars to all of a sudden there's not enough dollars out there. And paying those debts off is going to be very difficult if you cannot find the dollars in order to do it. So what do you have to do in order to get the dollars? You start selling off your assets, right? You start selling off the gold, you start selling off the stocks, you start selling off the Bitcoin, you're selling off whatever you can in order to get the dollars to pay off the debts. And that's really what I see happening it's happening now, but it's going to really intensify, in my opinion, in about 6 months to a year from now. And the only reason why I even bring up 6 months from now is because that's when the Treasury was talking about going into their bond buyback program, which I know a lot of people are arguing, about that, saying that will never exist, as far as the Treasury actually buying back bonds. But they're talking about it at the beginning of 2024. Right? Which seems to be right in line with what a lot of other people are talking about, having a liquidity issue taking place. So, for the first half of 2024, I'm thinking liquidity crisis is going to be the name of the game. And that's where everything is going to start selling off, like everything, in order to get the dollars to pay off the debt, or debts that they have, All right. It gets deep enough that few want to dig that far. Auto relays have silver. Appears. Okay, AI robot requires silver. All right, in 75 years, still a cycle. Is 75 years still a cycle? I don't know. 75 years. I mean, if we're talking about the currency itself, like the currency collapses about every 40 years, right? Mike Maloney talks about this quite a bit. Like, the currency lasts about every 40 years. You went from like the silver gold standard to a gold standard to the Bretton Woods standard to fiat currency standard to central bank digital currency standard, right? I mean, it's like every 40, 50 years or something like that, there's like another collapsing of the currency and then a reestablishing of something slightly different, All right. Matt Bittner. What's happening, man? All right. When I said Jason's hanging it up, I was referring to Wall Street from Main Street, YouTube channel owner quitting YouTube. Whoa, really? I didn't know that. Why? Jason Berwick, right? Isn't that right? Why is he quitting? Gresham Law works in trading baseball cards too. People trade the one they don't want. Yeah, no, that's actually a great way of looking at Gresham's Law. And that's why it's a law, right? Is because people look at it and say, man, I got two of them here. Which one do I like more? This is a good one. That's a bad one. Get rid of the bad one, right? I mean, that happens no matter what. You got two cars, right? Got a good car, a bad car. Which one do you want? I want to keep the good car, get rid of the bad car, right? That's Gresham's law. Thank you, All Nighter. All right. How's the weather there, man? I'm getting cooked here in 110 degrees in Texas. Hell no, man. I mean, it's like 80 here right now. And I don't even think it's 80. It's probably like 78, you know? I don't know. It's really beautiful. It's a nice, nice day here in Astoria. It was one of the better days of the summer. Not to brag, but it's about 80 in coastal San Diego. Yeah. Does the central bank digital currency necessarily adopt Bitcoin in your opinion? Nah, I think Bitcoin is going to be, I mean, in the end, you know, the SDR does have some gold, right? Even the Federal Reserve, and you look at the balance sheet, like Federal Reserve notes are specific to the bank, right? So like the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, of, you know, wherever, right? These notes are separate to those particular banks. And you can look at it. I mean, just look at the dollar, you know, and you can see right on there what Federal Reserve Bank is the issuer of it. If you have those dollars, right, those dollars are the first lien and paramount right to the Federal Reserve's balance sheet should they go bankrupt. So if the bank fails, right, you can take your folding paper dollars, not bank deposits like you have, like, you know, a bank deposit and you have it on your books. You say, no, right here's my bank deposit. No, I'm talking like the folding Federal Reserve notes. That's the first lien paramount right to the Federal Reserve's balance sheet. So when you go down there with Federal Reserve notes, you can say, hey, I want rights to your balance sheet, right? I mean, I got the notes here. And what's the first thing that they list on there is gold and then SDR, special drawing rights. So, you know, even like if you think about Bitcoin being part of like the central bank digital currency, I don't know if that's necessarily going to be part of the Fed's like balance sheet. Like, are they going to put Bitcoin in there alongside of gold and SDRs and stuff? I don't feel that that's going to be something that's going to happen. Now, I could be very wrong on that, but it's not anything that I've seen coming from the central banks in any kind of speech or any kind of language. Now, I know a lot of people are like, bullshit, look at XRP, right? Okay. I still haven't seen it yet, right? Not in that sense anyway. What I feel is probably going to end up happening is that you are going to have the Federal Reserve operating very similar to the way that they are operating today. Dollars, like folding dollars, are still going to be in the system. But when you deposit money into a bank, it's going to be deposited as a central bank digital currency. And there's going to be two currencies in the system: paper dollars and central bank digital currencies, trading one-to-one with each other, right? And this is how, again, like, you know, if we think about the way that, you know, the dollar was able to infiltrate the world reserve currency, you know, taking over gold, it was a fashion similar to this, right? So even still, like, you got the central bank digital currency. If people try to avoid that, I still feel that they are going to be forced into some sort of, goddamn flies, they're going to be forced into like using stable coin or something like that. So now you'll have, like, you know, this third party or whatever that's issuing out a stable coin being backed one-to-one with the dollar. But even still, if you're using a stable coin, any kind of monetary policy that is done to the dollar, if it's trading one-to-one with a stable coin, that monetary policy will transfer right through into the stable coin. So this is something that, like, I feel is probably going to end up being more the case, right? Is that the Federal Reserve, the banking system, will pretty much introduce a central bank digital currency. So unless you are holding cash, you are using central bank digital currencies, right? You'll still be able to use the cash, right, as far as like part of the system goes, because they don't want people freaking out about it. They'll still allow cash to function within the system just like anything else, but they will slowly start to pull that out, and they're going to make it a very, very cumbersome and a nuisance to use cash. They'll charge you to deposit and they'll charge you to withdraw it. Right? So as you go down to the store to say, hey, I'm not going to use central bank digital currencies, I'm only using cold hard cash, that's cool. They'll still use it, but you're probably going to end up paying a fee or a premium for using cash, because the store that you're using it at is going to be charged to deposit that cash into the bank, So no matter what, you're going to be part of that system, right? And you will end up losing purchasing power out of your dollars simply by holding on to cash as opposed to moving into a central bank digital currency. And this will force the people into central bank digital currencies. I mean, at least that's the way I see it. So as far as Bitcoin being backing of the dollar, I don't think so. Because again, if you had a fixed currency or a fixed item like Bitcoin, eventually what you'll end up having is a concentration of wealth. So if I had dollars that I can exchange for a Bitcoin, well, then I would just end up just taking all my dollars and buying nothing but Bitcoin with it. Right? Even if you were to take Bitcoin and move it into, like, say, a basket of stuff that was backing the dollar, like you got Bitcoin and gold and foreign currencies and all this other stuff that's sitting on a balance sheet that's backing the dollar, I still feel that if that was to happen at that point, that speculation going into Bitcoin would then force the problems to then emerge, as far as, like, you wouldn't be able to print up as much money, you would have a limited currency supply, and then unless you were an industrious nation, you would end up exporting all your money and you would fall into poverty. So no matter what, if there's a fixed currency, unless you were the most industrious nation being able to produce more than you purchase, it's going to fail. It's not going to fail. I mean, somebody's going to do much better than you are, but you personally will end up failing because you will have spent all your money and then you won't have anything left from it. So I mean, that's why I don't like the United States. I don't feel the United States should go back to a gold standard, not in the position that we are in. If we were a manufacturing powerhouse, I'd be all over it. I'd be, yes, definitely we got to go back to a gold standard. But we're not. We're a consuming nation. That means we would export all our gold and fall into poverty if we went back to a gold standard. All right, the ones that own all the BTC are the modern day equivalent of the De Beers and owned all the diamonds back in the day. They had to sell a few at a time to keep the prices up. All right, nice temperatures in some parts of California is probably why so many homeless people are there. Well, I would imagine that would be. We getting a break with some monsoons here in Phoenix. Wow. All right. What are the aliens about? I don't know. Yeah, you rock, dude. I really appreciate you and your channel, my friend. Blessings to you. Well, thank you so much. Kluken13, thank you so much for the great comment. All right, until they take over the exchange. Thanks. Good. Thank you, all-nighter. All right, I have a little gold in my teeth. My dentist is a crook. It sounds like there is no ultimate solution for currency in a situational. Fiat currencies like dollars for ease, transaction, liquidity, and gold Bitcoin for retaining value and non-inflationary. Yeah, and that's where I feel that if you, as an individual, really understand a lot of this stuff, then you can act in the best interest for yourself, right? Knowing what's going on out there, knowing how messed up it is, understanding, like, the whole, like, the crisis situations, the downturns, the, manipulations, all that stuff. If you could take all that stuff in, right, and then let go of expectations, right, to say, hey, I expect my government to conduct themselves in a particular way, or whatever, you get rid of all those expectations. You take in the information, you let go of the expectations, and then you try to conduct yourself in a way that is best suited for you and your family, right? Maybe that's taking on Bitcoin. Maybe that's buying gold. Maybe it's starting a business, doing all kinds of stuff. But not everybody is going to be in the same position to act in the same fashion as everybody else out there. But when you understand the economy for yourself, then you have a much better position to start making decisions for yourself that are going to benefit you. Most people are sitting there going, man, this situation sucks for me. We need to vote somebody in who's going to change the way this is done. I guarantee you it ain't going to happen. And there ain't not one person out there that you're ever going to vote for that's ever going to change anything to make your life any better. It's all up to you. You have to change it, and that's it. That is it, All right. If a country of India is buying all the silver, then who is buying all the gold? All right. They steal your gold too. Okay. Will the BRICS nations' currency fail? Why or why not? Well, first of all, it would have to exist in order for it to fail. So again, like I can't take in this whole BRICS currency. Like I can't even really like fathom it or even put any kind of real like theory to it because I don't really like spending time in the land of make believe, right? I mean, it's all pure imagination. That's really what it is. If there was an actual BRIC currency in existence, then I would be like, hey, let's take on some strategies, let's take on some theory, let's do some stuff with it. But until then, I don't like, I mean, it's just like, let's think a bunch of hypothetical situations that don't exist, right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. So I don't even consider the BRICS nations anything at all. Yeah, not anything. All right. Fail euro dollar. What is up with this fly, man? He is just like on me today. All right. Apparently, the real reason for that war that's raging at the moment is because they found out that where it holds one of the biggest deposits of rare earth minerals. Yeah, I hear that a lot too. All right. SDR has no gold any longer. IMF has gold. Well, who creates the SDR? Right? Isn't that the IMF? Alright. Gold is on the books at 42.22. Keep stacking, brothers and sisters. Yep, I agree. God's money will win. Sell it all. Scrapyards will stop working when cash is gone. Sold mine at the last high. Alright, they are publicly trading companies, alright, if you can find them. They have everyone busy stacking gold while nobody wants the platinum, but trust me, they do. When you work out why, then you open the door. Okay, so I'm not saying that platinum isn't a good metal to have. I have a little bit of platinum myself. I have a 10th ounce coin. Here's the thing. Gold and silver are super recognizable. And to the point, like silver almost is like beyond better than anything else out there. And here's the reason why. If you have a 1 ounce gold coin and you have a 1 ounce silver coin, even a 1 ounce platinum coin, right? You have these 3 coins. And you're in a position in which that you need money now. Like you're like, man, oops, I need money, right? Now, if you need a lot of money, then the platinum and gold, cool, right? I mean, because, you know, in a 1 ounce gold coin, a 1 ounce platinum coin, you're talking, you know, thousands of dollars. But when it comes to a silver coin, it's only $20, $30, right? So if you need a lot of money, yeah, I can see where platinum and gold might, you know, suit you pretty well. But say you need to liquidate this stuff like right now, like I need it within hours, right? And you don't have a coin shop that is open, or pawn shop, or, you know, some kind of gold or silver dealer. Now, how do you get this money for your coin? Because you need to liquidate it right now. You need the money, it's emergency, whatever it is, right? If you have a platinum coin, you're going to find a difficult time. Well, I mean, at least for me, and I mean, I know a lot of people, I got a pretty good network, but I'm going to have a hell of a time trying to find somebody to buy that 1 ounce platinum coin from me. I'd probably have an easier time. I mean, I'm almost guessing I'd probably have a lot easier time trying to find somebody to buy the gold coin off of me. I can almost guarantee I'll find somebody to buy the silver, right? I mean, like between the other two, silver would almost be no problem, right? Because of the network I have. Like, I know a lot of people who'd be willing to buy a silver coin, right? So, okay, so I can liquidate silver a hell of a lot faster and easier than I could gold, and a lot faster than platinum. But say I'm in a situation in which I don't even have a network, right? I'm in like the middle of some town or whatever that I'm not familiar with, right? And now you got to unload your gold, you got to unload your platinum, or you got to unload silver. Now, if it's the middle of the day, you might find a shop, right? You can go to the coin shop, you can go to pawn dealer, whatever, even jeweler or something like that, and unload one of these precious metals. But what if there's the weekend? What if it's closed? What if, you know, it's nighttime or whatever? I can almost guarantee that no matter what town you're in, no matter what state, county, whatever, anywhere in this country, if you walk into a handful of bars with a silver coin and you start asking people if they'd be willing to buy it, I almost guarantee you that it wouldn't take you very long before you would find somebody who would be willing to buy it, right? just from the casual conversations that I've had with people sitting at the bar, most likely there's going to be somebody in that bar who'd be willing to give you money for that silver coin. Not so much for the gold coin, probably not at all for the platinum coin, right? Unless you happen to be in the right area. So to me, if it comes to liquidity issues, right, you're holding on to this stuff for security reasons, for, you know, prepping reasons or whatever, you know, for protecting yourself from that third party or, you know, whatever, like, emergency situation that you're in. Silver, in my opinion, is going to be far easier to get your money out of, to liquidate, than any other coin out there, including gold. Not saying that platinum won't shoot up in price. Like, you might be able to buy a platinum coin today and in 5 years or whatever be able to sell it for 10 times as much. I don't know. I'm not trying to predict that or anything. I'm just trying to give an example of what it could possibly do for you and say, how much better it would be. But for me, I think of liquidity, right? How quick can I unload this stuff if I need that? And I just see where platinum would be a lot more cumbersome than, say, silver would be. All right, Simon, I think CBDC will fail, then gold. I don't think so. And I mean, the only reason is that it doesn't go that way unless there's a complete collapse. Like, gold won't be reintroduced into the American monetary system. Like, I guess it could. Like, it could be. I shouldn't say that it won't. It's just that it is very unlikely to happen, right? In that, the only way that gold would really come back to being a monetary metal here in the United States is if we suffered a complete collapse of the entire fiat system, which then would mean hell. Like, it would be very ugly here. Nobody would really want that, except for people who maybe had, like, lots of gold and silver, because they would be like the kings, right? They would be sitting there while everybody else is suffering. I can't imagine the quality of life that would be in the United States if that was the situation. I mean, it's not like we're going to have all these awesome conveniences that are everywhere if we're sitting on a gold standard. That's what I think a lot of people fail to kind of grasp, is that if we move back to, like, where gold is the main form of currency here in the United States, I doubt we would see any of the conveniences that we have here, and there would be a very big struggle for life that would be taking place. Not something I would be looking forward to. All right, but wouldn't people not hoard gold and instead buy cash flow generating assets with it? In a gold-based system, there is no inflation, so why hold an asset which generates no cash flow? So let me ask you though, how do you create a cash flow when you have a situation, like, say you've used your money to buy rental incomes, right? But we're sitting in a gold standard running through a business cycle, and all of a sudden there's a concentration of wealth happening, and now people can't afford to pay your rent. Right? And they're not going to get a stimulus check to pay your rent, right? Not like, before, when all of a sudden you have this major liquidity issue and they're just like, oh, here's a bunch of free money for you to go out and pay your rent with. That wouldn't happen. You would have downturns, major ones. And so what you would have to expect is during the good times, you would get a return on your investment for whatever gold purchase, whatever assets you purchase with your gold. But during the down times, you're not going to get a return on that, right? I mean, you would be going through business cycles, not like the debt cycles we experience today, where you can buy things that would continually go up every year as it, makes its way through the debt cycle. Business cycles operate much differently than that. And so it's not like you would just buy a cash flowing asset and just anticipate that it's going to happen every year. During the downturns, it would fail. I mean, that's not a guarantee. You might be able to find stuff that could cash flow through it, but it's not going to be like easy access to cash flow like you have today. Like, a lot of people just, especially when it comes to, like, real estate, a lot of times you'll have, like, this idea that it just doesn't go down, or that, you buy a house and you can just flip it for more money, not even thinking why it's happening, why you're able to do it for more. It wouldn't be the same environment. You would have a whole lot less commerce taking place on a gold-backed currency. I mean, sometimes you would have a lot of commerce happening, but, again, it's business cycles, so it would slow down, and then it would be redistribution of the money again. All right, I buy that gold. Platinum is cheaper than AU. When you dollar cost average into stocks, Is it mainly the dividend and the reason you buy shares? That's for me personally. I've been buying dividend paying stocks, and I've pretty much just only been buying Altria. And the main reason is that I just don't feel like right now is a really good time to be in the stock market, just because I think that, again, 2024, we're going to have liquidity issues, and people are going to be looking for cash. They're going to sell gold, silver, stock, bonds, whatever, in order to get that cash. Now, I picked one particular stock, Altria, Marlboro Cigarettes, Anheuser-Busch. During recessions, people have a tendency to drink and smoke a lot, right? So to me, like, that's one business that I think would probably do fairly well through a recession. No guarantee to that, but, it's a possibility. It's also a dividend paying stock, meaning that, every so often I get a check, or, I get a deposit anyway, for simply just holding those stocks, right? And, even if you don't plan on selling them, just having the stocks in your portfolio, you get some money off of it. You actually get cash flow, right? Now, here's something that I find very, very interesting. When you think about, like, cash flow, right? You think about like like a cow, right? Like a cow that milks, every day you can get milk out of the cow. You think about like Altria. Altria is Marlboro and Marlboro cigarettes, Anheuser-Busch, Juul, like there's a few other things that are going on in it. But when you think about that, that is something that is not necessarily like a necessity that somebody purchases, but in an addiction, in an addict's mind, it is, right? And now I'm not trying to play off of like, the pain of somebody who's addicted. I was addicted for a long time. I was addicted to alcohol for a very long time, and it took me a lot to get off of it. It's going to be there, right? And to say like you shouldn't profit from something like that, somebody is going to, right? And I see how it is that it's going to take place, right? I do my best to try and get people to not drink and smoke. I put that out here on the channel, but I'm not going to deny that it's going to profit, or that it could, and that I want to make some money off of that. It's just the way it is, right? It's like people who don't want to invest in defense stocks or something like that, even though there's wars breaking out. Like, you can make money off of it, but you're not going to do it because you have this moral issue with it. Some people feel that way. This world, when it comes to survival, it doesn't care about you. I don't know why you would care about, trying to protect these people or something out there by not investing into something like that. I don't see it that way at all. Like, take your money, get as much as you can, and do the best you can with what you've done with it, right? So if you could take that money, make a bunch from whatever company or off of whatever stock, and then turn around and do some really good with it, that's awesome too, right? So anyway, but when you think about like the cash, like the milk, the cow, right? The cash cow that's going to be like constantly putting out money. When it comes to addiction, those people look at it like it's a necessity. But then you can get into things like, I don't know, like, some soap company, right? I mean, like, dishwashing detergent or something like that. Get a company into that where, you're going to be constantly purchasing this stuff because you need it, right? It's like a necessity. Not like an addiction necessity, but like a real necessity. So you can go into commodity or into companies like that, right? Where you're looking at it as saying, no matter what, whether you're going into recession or not, people are going to be buying dishwashing fluid or something like that, or, dishwashing detergent. You can kind of look at stuff like that. That's still kind of the way I kind of see it. Now, I'm not somebody who can pick out stocks and bonds and, know how to do all that trading kind of thing. I just kind of look at what it is that I feel that is going to happen into the future and whether or not people are going to be putting money towards it. And that's the way I see, like, Altria anyway, and purchasing that. Dollar cost average into it, you hardly notice any, put $50 a month in, you don't really notice that, $50 a month is missing. Most people, like, it might be painful to throw $100 at it, but once the $100 is spent, you don't really think about it much, once it's gone. So. All right. BTC coins. To make water go through electrolysis, they have to use platinum in the process. Back to live. I missed 45 gas prices. Simon, budget question. Is there a scenario where buying a 60 to 80,000 makes sense? See a lot of them driving around lately. Are you talking about cars? I don't know. If you're talking about cars, no. Never does it make any sense to buy an expensive car. Like, in my opinion, never, right? There's nothing but just headaches and maintenance and money being spent on it. You might be able to say justify it because you'll end up with something that's reliable, but I'm pretty sure you can find something that's damn reliable for, a hell of a lot less than $60,000 or $80,000. That is, if we're talking about cars or trucks or something. So to me, like, vehicles are disposable. Like, they shouldn't cost hardly anything. Obviously, not everybody's going to get a free Explorer. Like, their parents are going to give it to them. But my other two vehicles that I have, I drive a $1,200 S10 and I drive a $500 Toyota. Right? These are my vehicles that I would typically have driven until I got this thing. And I plan on driving those things until they completely stopped working, right? And they both run right now. Being able to have those vehicles and not have to stress about making a payment or a high insurance or, anything like that has saved me an insane amount of money. Like, I am able to have a lot more investments going on because I have those two really crappy vehicles. Anyway. Hey Simon, love you and the positive energy you put out. Well, thank you very much, Rusty Dollar. I'm trying to keep those, keep the vibration high, keep the, the good high energy going. We discuss a lot of negative stuff here on this channel. The economy, they say, like, the economy is the dismal science, right? Studying economics. And it's really true. Like, there is a lot of really depressing stuff when you read through the economy. You hear a lot about crashes and, bankruptcies and defaults and just all the stuff that happens because, it's just the natural course of things. It's hard not to take this information in a negative way and then retain it as negative, right? It's difficult to do that. Most people look at, like, the information that they're getting or what's happening out there and think of all the chaotic crisis situations that can come from it, right? And then they sit there and they stew on these things and spin them around over and over again. And what ends up happening from that is you find yourself in a very depressed position, right? Where everything that you're looking out at is very depressing, right? You can't enjoy yourself anymore because you're thinking about how, like, everything is going to be collapsing around you, or how, like, the New World Order is taking over and stuff like that. That was something that I lived for a very long time. I lived just like that, thinking those kind of thoughts. And then I wonder, now I wonder why I was failing, If you have a failing attitude, it's not even your attitude about it, it's just the failing perception, right? Dollars crashing, economy's crashing, government sucks, all this other stuff. Everything that you see in your view is going to have that negative overtone to it, right? Everything. So although we have all this negative kind of low vibration stuff that we look at, it doesn't mean that we have to give it that meaning, right? And that's really where it comes down to, is that if we take this information and says, man, this has the meaning of it's going to destroy my life, that's exactly what it's going to do for you. It's going to destroy your life, right? But if you take this stuff as the meaning of, like, man, this is heavy stuff, man. This is hard to wrap my head around, about how difficult, the situation is from it. But it's here and it exists. How do I use this information to benefit myself, right? And that's really how you take in this negative information and give it a different meaning and say it's not negative, it's a positive. How do I turn this into a positive for me? How do I take this negative information and be able to conduct myself in a way that I come out benefiting from it? Right? And that's how you end up dealing. That's how I ended up dealing with it, to try and make things better, considering all the negative stuff that I was looking at. So it's very important to keep a high vibration going, keeping the high positive feelings and understandings going, because if you take on a negative feeling, negative understanding, giving it negative meaning, then that's exactly what it's going to do for you. It's going to be a negative. I got some super chats. Let's go check those out. Oh, there it is. Hey, Rusty Dollar, thank you very much for the $1.99. Hey, Simon, love you and the positive energy spreads. Thank you very much, man. I appreciate the $1.99. That was very kind of you. All right, where's the other one? There it is. Chris, thank you very much for the $10, man. Appreciate the content. Well, thank you for the super sticker, man. That's very cool of you. All right. Where's Oprah to hand out free cars that come with tax burden? What should minimum wage be on a gold standard? We shouldn't have a gold standard. I mean, and shouldn't be a minimum wage, period. No minimum wage, doesn't matter if we have a gold standard or not. Minimum wage is about the most insulting thing that could ever happen to the American worker in every way, right? I mean, you think about it. If you make just above minimum wage and all of a sudden they increase minimum wage, you just lost now you're making minimum wage, right? Unless you got a raise with it. Granted, a lot of companies will, give out raises when the minimum wage goes up. But for the most part, minimum wage is something that nips at most people's heels as they try to advance themselves and get higher wages, work hard, get a pay raise, and then all of a sudden, minimum wage comes up. And it's just like, man, what was the point of the pay raise? It doesn't do me any good, right? So minimum wage really is terrible for people who are struggling, trying to get themselves ahead by working hard and earning more money, like getting better positions, taking on more responsibilities and stuff like that. You get this higher pay, and then minimum wage erodes that from you. Right? So what's the point, right? What's the point of trying? And then again, there's plenty of businesses out there who would love to hire somebody, but they can't afford to pay these people minimum wage because the job that they could really do isn't that great. Like, they don't really have the mental capacity or even just awareness to conduct themselves in a business environment. Like like if you were at a store or something like that. Like, there's people, like, if you're not friendly, if you can't handle it, if you got mental issues or something, and you can't earn your boss minimum wage, like, or at least a profit for your boss in a way that they can pay you minimum wage, then they're just simply not going to hire you, right? Like, say, for example, just sweeping the parking lot, right? There might be plenty of people out there who would work for $5 an hour to sweep the parking lot and wash windows and just do simple little things that don't don't take any kind of mental genius to figure out. And that's all they can really do because, really that's all they can handle. But unless you can do it at a pace that is fast enough and good enough that it makes your boss a profit, then you're too stupid to work in America. That's what it's telling you. That's what the minimum wage is saying, is that if you can't earn enough profit for your boss at this minimum wage level, then you're too stupid to work in America. That's what happens, and that sucks. That's insulting. Shouldn't be that way. People should be able to negotiate for whatever wage that they want to earn. Period. All right? I mean, that's my opinion on it anyway. What will happen in very expensive world is that people stop having 2 or 3 kid families and just have one. In the end, you have aging societies relying on the state pensions and no youngsters. Yeah, that's exactly what ends up happening. I mean, even Cantillon describes that, if you want, the most populated states are those who are most content to live in poverty. Right? Those nations that are most content to live in poverty have the highest populations. All right. Yeah, I just remember at the end of The Big Short, it said Burry was investing in water. That was years ago, though. Yeah. Some vehicles, like classic cars, are assets. Yeah, I mean, this is a 1998 Ford Explorer. Isn't it a classic? I mean, my classic car, right? Alright. What time is it? Hour and 23 minutes into it. Right on, guys. Well, this has been a fun live stream. I don't know if you have any more questions, if we want to kind of dive into this again, if we have, like... God, there was something else I wanted to read out of this thing, but I can't remember what it was. I wanted to bring it up and, yeah, I can't remember what it was. Oh, well. Alright, let's go down here. I agree. Government representatives' regulations are intrusions into the personal liberties, yeah. What's your favorite Gwar album? Awesome. Gwar, I haven't heard of that in a long time, man. That was funny. All Nighter Hider, have you seen Gwar? Right on. Let's see. What else should we talk about? Or are we done for the night? Is this it? Are we good for the day? I remember them. Who was it? My buddy. He was really into, like... Who was that, that German, that really heavy German band, right? Rammstein? Is that what was it? Rammstein? What was the name of that or that group? Yeah, Rammstein. That's what I thought. Alright. Have you ever thought about investing in water somehow? You know, it's difficult for me to think about investing in water. And not because I don't see it being like a necessity in the future and how much demand for it, you know, because you just can't live without water. But I'm from an area, I mean, I'm next to a river that's 5 miles wide, right? 4.3 miles wide. I live in an area where rain falls 9 months out of the year. Like, I don't think about water as not being abundant. Like, to me, water is like the most abundant thing ever, right? But I understand, like, there's a lot of places in the country that don't feel it, but it just happens to be the area that I live. I don't think about water because it's just so much of it is so prevalent here, you know? Two M's? I don't remember. Why is UFO all over the news? I don't know. Is there UFOs in the news? I don't even really pay attention to that kind of stuff. Yeah, the lead singer got caught being a pervert to fans. Oh. Interesting stuff. We want to talk about bands, huh? All right. Do you think UFOs exist? UFOs. That's kind of a weird one. No, I don't. I think there's some really odd stuff that is out there that has happened that is not quite explainable, and I think it would be very narrow thinking to say that there is no other life other than what exists on this planet. Like, I just don't see that. But as far as like aliens roaming amongst us and traveling back and forth and doing all that other stuff, I think that's a lot of fun to think about, but I don't think it's real, you know? Alright. UFOs seem like a distraction, but I'm a cynic. Yeah, I agree with you, all-nighter. Alright, all I say about UFOs is that the universe is so vast that the odds of other life forms not existing is infinitely small. Yeah, and that's kind of what I see it too. Like, I mean, as far as like, you know, everything off of this planet, it would be very difficult for me to believe that there is no other form of life anywhere other than this little tiny little blip here on this planet, you know? I mean, I would have a hard time thinking that. Alright. Yes, they're saying, I'm ready to be probed, to be honest with you. Well, to each their own, I guess. Alright. Yes, 100. Me and a cousin experienced one in 1995 on the west coast of Ireland. Wow. All right. Appliance delivery as a main hustle, but then lawn care, pressure washer, and log splitting and scrapping as a side hustle. Yeah, I know somebody who just started, what was it? Duct cleaning, right? You know, cleaning out like the heating ducts and stuff like that. I know another guy who had a window cleaning business, and by chance just had a guy ask him about cleaning the roof. So he knocked the moss off of like, the composite roof or whatever. So he started another business doing that. He said it actually did quite well this summer, quite by accident. Some guy asked him to do it, and then next thing you know, everybody else is asking him too. When they drop a nuke, they will blame the aliens. Years later, I searched it and loads of info came up about it. Alright, Softwash. The South Park episode when Cartman abducted by aliens was pretty funny. The guy's in the aliens, man. Alrighty. Well, since I think we're done talking about dollar and the world reserve currency and Gresham's law and Triffin's dilemma, you've helped me with UFOs, unidentified fiscal opportunities. That's awesome. That was a good one. I like that. Cool. Well, thank you guys for being here. It's been awesome. The thing is, we never saw it, but we knew it was there, literally a tennis ball throw away. Wow. Do you ever drive forklift at all in the lumber yard? I used to do that for 3 years. Oh yeah, I was driving forklift around earlier today, unloading trucks and loading customers up and stuff. I drive forklift every day. There was a time when I did a lot more, forklift driving in the yard and stuff, but now I do mostly sales, so I'm answering the phone most of the time. But, I go down there and jump on the forklift just about every day. I got to move something around. All right. Bring dishes on the live stream. Okay. Well, maybe we'll do that. Let's see here. I think we're busy tomorrow, but I'll probably do a live stream on Sunday or something like that. And yeah, we'll bring dishes on. We can ask her some questions and see what she thinks. All right. I'm still looking for another pair of dice for you, trying to locate locally versus Amazon. All right. Well, I appreciate that all-nighter. You guys have been awesome. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for, helping, break down and discuss a lot of this issues when it comes to the dollar and the world reserve currency, how it became this world reserve currency, how it's going to end up losing out as a world reserve currency status. These are things that are very good questions to try and figure out. And, a lot of times when we hear the news and we look out there, we see a lot of stuff that is very one-sided and not really taking in information from all directions. I think it's very important that when you hear a particular narrative out there, that you look at it from as many angles as you can so that you can really get a clear understanding. Most of the time, people who are presenting information are trying to sell something, so kind of keep that in mind as well. All right. What's the tattoo you got on your left shoulder? On my left shoulder, here, I'll show you guys. It's a lion. It's badass too. I got this a while back. All right. Isn't that cool? She did a hell of a job on that too. All right. Do a burnout before you go. No, nope. These old vehicles, you can't do that kind of thing with, or else you don't get to drive them around very long. All right. Thanks for taking the time to read our comments. Oh, absolutely. This is what the live stream is all about. It's about you and the comments and, having this discussion, bringing up those topics that a lot of times, like, even the BRICS currency, like so many people have taken on this idea that the BRICS currency is going to do something, right? There is no such thing. Like, there's no such currency. You can't hold on to one and say, here, this is what it is. To take on theories and try to understand what this currency is, to me, is not necessarily a waste of time, right? Because I think, like, the thought of it is worthy of kind of rolling that around. But to be feeling like a threat from it, No way. Like, it doesn't exist at all out there. And, you know, this is, again, one of the things that we discuss quite a bit on this channel. You know, it's just stuff like that. So it's really important to break these things down and to look at it from as many angles as possible, you know? All right. Thanks, Simon, and everyone for the participation. Yeah, thanks for moderating this. Yeah, thank you, All Nighter. Thank you very much for being here, man. Are you buying bricks? How do you buy it? No, I'm not involved in any of that. Thanks, Simon. Hopefully catch up again with a live stream this weekend sometime. Yeah, absolutely, guys. We'll try and do this again, say Sunday, maybe, you know, late afternoon, early afternoon, something like that. Or not late, late morning, early afternoon. You know, I'll try and get something in around there, and we'll, you know, find another topic to break down. I thought this was a really good one. I thought, you know, I thought this would have been a lot more popular, but maybe I'll just break these down in a regular video and kind of get a little bit more of the points out that I wanted to get. Anyhow, and besides, these flies are driving me crazy. I don't know what's going on. Nobody's leaving the dollar. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you all for the great comments, you know, especially those supporting comments for the channel. Very awesome of you. Thank you so much for the super chats, you know, and all the support you give for the channel. Thank you very much for hitting that like button. We have 89 likes right now with 87 people watching, which I always love. Uneducated Economist. You guys let me know. What's the alternative to dollars? Crickets? Good evening, UA. Thanks for the stream. Yeah, well, thank you for being here. All right, we'll talk to you guys later.